You ever notice how normal things look at night? Streetlights, mailboxes, the exact way a neighbor's porch light hums? They're small, honest facts about a place, and they keep you believing in ordinary life. I slept under those lights for 10 years. They were the kind of fixtures you never questioned. Until the night they stopped being neutral. My name is Jack. I'm 39. I sell industrial HVAC systems, which is less romantic than it sounds, but it pays the mortgage. We live in a subdivision where the yards are clean and the kids ride bikes in the cul-de-sacs. I thought my marriage was the same kind of tidy, practical, a little boring, but dependable. Emma and I had been married 9 years. 2 cars in the driveway, 1 golden retriever named Nora, a blue swing on the back porch we put up when we first bought the house. We were the couple who brought casserole dishes to each other's parents on holiday. We were ordinary, and that ordinariness felt like security. People tell you that betrayal is loud, that you'll hear a breaking and feel a fracture like a snapped bone. That's a lie. Betrayal begins like a draft, a slow, inexplicable chill under the door. For me, it was a text that vanished. Simple as that. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a bill spreadsheet open and Nora's head in my lap. Emma kissed my shoulder and walked upstairs. Her phone pinged on the counter. She never turned around to pick it up. A preview flashed. "Missed you already?" My thumb hovered over the screen as if the touch itself would change the world. Then she came down, and the phone was face down, the notification gone. I laughed it off for a week. Work was busy. People text things and forget. But the laugh was a plaster. It didn't hold. Then came the receipt. A folded parking stub in the laundry. 11:18 p.m. River District Garage. I called her, my voice softer than I wanted. "Late rehearsal," she said. "They reblocked the scene." She tacked on how sorry she was and that she'd make dinner Sunday. I believe complex webs when I want to. You get to a point where the noise inside your head wants confirmation. You can either let it eat you or try to quiet it. I chose the quiet with a practical edge, a car tracker. It was cowardice wrapped in pragmatism. I told myself I only wanted facts. I installed it under her bumper at 3 in the morning while she slept, and I felt awful about it the whole time, the cold steel and the furtive angle of my hands. But I also felt oddly competent, as if I was doing the only thing left that could make the world make sense. The tracker pinged that evening at 8:05, 30 miles away, near the east side of town where a strip mall sits, a place I'd driven past 1,000 times and never thought about. I followed. People imagine following is dramatic, a car creeping through alleys, heart pounding. It was that, and it wasn't. I sat in my truck, windows cracked for the night air, and watched Emma step out of someone else's sedan, laughing at something the man said. He put a hand to her shoulder like he owned that small space. She leaned in. I watched them from behind a hedge and felt a part of me go strangely calm, like an animal that has been cataloging signs and finally recognizes a pattern. I did not speak. I did not move. I could feel the cold of the ute seat under me and the warm of my coffee turning to sludge in the cup holder. In the back of my throat, something detached and clinical began to tally. Dates, times, seats in the theater where they had been, the signature of a laugh in a photograph she'd liked on Instagram. When you see the thing you are afraid of, the question becomes immediate. What do you do? People in stories shout and storm. I sat in traffic and went home. At midnight, she walked in like a woman who'd been out until midnight, more times than she could count, and kissed my forehead like it was ordinary. I poured her a cup of chamomile and tried to bend my face into normal. She smelled like someone else. Maybe she always had. Maybe my tolerance for certain scents had been lower for years. It's impossible to know which truth you're inventing to sustain the person you've been. The first confrontation was reasonable, which makes sensible scenes easier to remember and much harder to bear. "Who's Daniel?" I asked that Sunday morning, lifting a mug with both hands because my palms were shaking. Daniel. The name came like gravel. Her face changed in the fraction between the question and the answer, in a way you only notice when you've been cataloging faces for years. He shows at the repertory sometimes, she said. He's got this new approach. He's in and out. She said it like a matter-of-fact logistics report. He's just helping out on a scene. I followed you last week, I said before I could chew my words down to civility. I saw you two together. Her jaw worked. Jack, you can't do that. You think I want to do it? I didn't want this, but you can't lie to me and expect me to be okay. She looked wounded, not at the lie, but at the accusation. She pressed her lips together, that small line that meant she was thinking through the versions. There was something there, she said slowly. But it's not what you're imagining. Is it just emotional? I asked. I wanted yes. I wanted the tiny absolution of infidelity that you can put in a box. A fair wrong, apology, fixable. Emotions are messier than boxes. She said, It was attention, Jack. He listened. He didn't laugh at me. He asked questions I forgot were possible. It's not the same thing as what you and I had, but it was real. This was the slow sapping, the knowledge that love can be morphological, change into other shapes you can't recognize. For a day, we pretended to live like ourselves. For a week, we went to therapy. We sat under the ferns of a woman counselor who asked about boundaries and needs like she could salve the rotted wood by painting it. We listed ways to rebuild trust. She agreed to stop seeing him. She kissed the inner side of my wrist with a sweetness that made me think of glass. Beautiful and easily broken. For a while, I drank in the sweetness like someone who expects a sugar bowl to hold forever. People I trusted noticed the shift. Nora began to follow me around at night like she could anticipate the places I'd go thinking. Friends asked if I was okay, and I answered with the practiced politeness of someone whose private grief is not theirs to spread. The ledger in my phone had grown. Dates, times, emails, a photograph I took from the car showing two heads close at a cafe. I saved it like evidence, the way people save shells or small relics from when the tide was kinder. Here's where the sequence of events steepens and gets ugly. The week after Emma promised to sever contact, she didn't. She texted him late at night with questions about blocking and line readings and spacing. One message I found was an apology that said, I'm sorry. I don't know what I want to do yet. The language was a knife, not salacious, not explicit, a single line that contained space for every imagined betrayal. I stopped pretending to be the reasonable man after that. I went to the place where people break. I looked for proof the way a man with an engineering mind finds a missing part in a machine. I logged into an account she'd abandoned. I read messages. I watched one thread that stretched over months where Daniel wrote small, careful things. You're brilliant about that turn. Don't worry about it. He wrote once. You make me slow down. The bareness of those lines was more damning to me than any pornography. It was the slow theft of attention. Then came the night when things moved so fast I didn't have time to think. Emma told me she was going to a late read-through. I said nothing because silence had become my instrument. At 9:18, the tracker pinged River District again. At 9:45, I was in the car. I parked a block away, feeling the absurdity of my life turning into something clandestine. I watched a silhouette move beneath sodium light, two shadows that merged. I thought about how neighbors might have seen me if they watched the wrong house. At 10:12, I saw her step out and a man, not exactly Daniel, but similar enough, brushed his hand against the small of her back. He leaned in. Something private hurried between them. The way he touched her was not violence. It was not even love in the sensual cinematic sense. It was, worse perhaps, a tender scheduling of presence. He put something into her palm. She put her head against his shoulder, like the world had been reduced to that small warmth. I walked up to them, like a man who had a choice, and took the path that ruined him. I did not shout first. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop the wordless noise. "Emma," I said. My voice broke into the night like broken glass. They turned, and for the first second, all three of us existed together. Two people who had the comfort of built-up lies and one who had the ledger. Daniel's face slid into that polite, friendly mask. "Jack," he said, "we were just talking about the blocking." He held out an adult hand because that's what men in scripts do when they want to own a scene. "You're overstepping," I said. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "You're here because she invited you," I told him. I thought then about what my father used to say. If you've got something sharp, use it once and clean it. I had used my suspicion like a blade for months. That night, the blade felt blunt. Emma looked at me like I was an animal on a leash. "You're doing this because you can't stand uncertainty," she said. Her words had that evenness that used to soothe me. Now they stung. "You're following me." "No," I said. "I'm trying to understand." I thought if I could force the scene to become explicit, I could survive it. Articulate, logical, true. Humans are terrible at premonitions. Then the oddest thing happened. The man, Daniel, laughed something private, and the laugh landed wrong in my chest. He stepped closer, the way a man steps when he means something private. Emma took a step back, and then she reached into her bag in the way her hands used to move when she wanted to distract me during a fight. A small pivot of motion. For a second, I thought she was doing something like pulling out a set of car keys. Then, impossibly, a small rectangle of paper fell from her hand and fluttered at my feet. The world slit. It was an envelope, not a letter we'd written each other on anniversaries, but a small manila envelope with someone else's handwriting. Daniel's voice made a mock surprise sound, and Emma's face melted into a stone. "Oh, God," she said. I recognized the handwriting on the envelope because 2 years ago we had mailed a form that used that same handwriting. The name on the corner made me sick. Harrington Co. It was a law firm. My brain jerked in complicated ways. Law firm meant paperwork. Paperwork meant something official. The envelope had not been intended to fall. It was deliberate. I picked it up like a man handling something that might explode. There was a card inside, folded once. I opened it with hands that were no longer my own. The card read, in block letters, "Temporarily withdrawn. See you soon." Below, in faint pencil, a phone number. I looked at Daniel. He smiled like a man who had rehearsed for every contingency. Emma's eyes were wet and empty in the front of her face. "What is this?" I asked. Daniel answered first. "We've been helping Anna with a temporary relocation. She needed a clean break. She told us she'd come back." He said it with the kind of smoothness people use when they practice lying at breakfast. "It's all legal." The name on the card, Anna, was not Emma's name. Emma's middle name is Anne. Had someone shortened it? My disorientation gathered speed. "Anna?" I repeated. Emma's hand went to her mouth. "It's a backup," she said, as if that made it less of a bomb. I thought if I left for a bit, I could figure things out. We didn't want to hurt you. We thought it would be better if I went somewhere to clean my head. Harrington helps people like that." Harrington, the law firm, felt like a finality I didn't want to accept. The envelope meant arrangements, money, a plan that had structure and a timetable. I read the phone number aloud like a dare. It had the area code of the clinic on the other side of the state, the one that does temporary housing and legal name transitions. If you're reading this and you've never been in the middle of human paper, it sounds bureaucratic and dry. For me, it felt like the hinge on our life had been lubricated in secret. "Why would you do that without telling me?" I said, trying to make my voice small so as not to attract anyone. Emma's answer came slow and nitrogen quiet. Because I didn't want to watch you barricade me with anger. Because I was afraid you'd try to haul me back. Because I wanted to be sure I wasn't just moving from one cage to another. The night blurred after that. For a few minutes, there was an argument of half-sentences and accusations. The man, Daniel, stood aside like an actor who'd finally been called to be truthful and was happy to role-play. People gathered from the street, concerned neighbors who noticed the raised voices and thought to split the difference with community pastor sayings. Emma walked away like someone who had rehearsed departure in the privacy of her head. "I'm going," she said. She kissed my forehead as if it was the last time. She did not beg. She did not insist. She left. This is where things go dark in the way people mean when they say dark. It's cold and dull and all the color drains. Emma packed a bag in the morning, like someone moving to a different planet. She told me she'd call. She told me she loved me. Then she closed the door and she was a silhouette that receded. I remember the sound of the car starting like a heart skipping. Harrington, when I called, had a receptionist who used a programmed empathy. "We handle multiple cases for temporary protective relocations," she said, in a voice that seemed chosen from an HR script. She would not, she told me, discuss client matters without the client's permission. It's a legal wall that is sensible and cold. I filled in forms about complaint and petition. The police advised, kindly and bureaucratically, to wait and see if she contacted me. "Sometimes people leave to find themselves," the officer said. "Give it time." Weeks stretched into that bland purgatory you read about in books. The house became a museum of absence. Nora slept on the pillow where Emma used to rest her head during work emails. I cooked food and set out 2 plates the way people do when they are trying to pretend a life continues. Friends texted, I answered with a stoic emoji. I replayed the envelope in my head and the timbre of Daniel's voice. Why Harrington? Why a legal buffer? Why the secret exit? Then one hot August night, something happened that broke whatever small scaffold I'd been clinging to. A man I didn't know knocked at my door. He was older, with hands that looked like they'd done a lot of practical work. He held an envelope in one hand and an expression that made me think of a funeral. "Mr. Keller?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. My heart was a thing that could be counted. He handed me the envelope. It had no return address, only the same handwriting as the one dropped that night. I opened it with a kind of dread that makes you feel complicit in your own undoing. Inside was a photograph. Emma standing on a bridge, looking out over water, the wind making hair ribbons. She smiles in the photograph in a private way. On the back, a message written small, "Tell Jack I'm safe. Tell him I needed it. E." There was another line scrawled beneath in a different hand. "Leave him the house." The second line shook me in a way I didn't expect. "Leave him the house." It was either a kindness or a provocation. It meant she had thought about my life, arranged something, and chosen to give me bricks while she took the sky. The photograph smelled faintly of salt. The neighbor who'd brought the photograph was helpful. He said he'd found it in a mailbox he used for rental keys and thought I should have it. He offered condolences like one hands out Band-Aids. I stared at the picture for a long time and felt something inside me close like a fist. The house can be left with a kindness and a cruelty in it both. That night I tried to sleep and could not. I went outside and walked the block, feeling like a man who'd been turned into one of those items you see in other people's lives where time and grief are on display. On the corner, someone had propped a chalkboard sign. Local theater benefit tonight. Daniel's name was on the poster. It's easy to write a neat end for stories like this. People want clean arcs. They want redemption, revenge, catharsis. Life is not that tidy. 2 weeks later, I got the call from the police. They had found her car at the edge of the lake, nose stuck into reeds, no sign of forced entry. The airbags hadn't deployed. Her phone was under the passenger seat, still charged. The The coroner said it was likely she'd stepped out of the car and wandered into the water. They called it an accident. I listened to the officer like someone watching a play. I remember the exact clunk the phone made when I dropped it into the bathroom sink. Sound ricochets. The world suddenly had an echo and an absence. At the funeral, neighbors spoke in carefully chosen cadences. Someone folded a letter into my hands. A patient woman from church had baked scones and pressed them into the pew like sacrament. The motor mouth of small-town condolences clicked along. People offered phrases. "You'll get through this," "Time heals." It felt performative and true at the same time. 2 months after the funeral, I sat at the kitchen table and found something else. A key, taped underneath the drawer where Emma kept coupon clippings. It was not for our house. It was for a safe deposit box at a bank on the edge of town. I'd never seen it before. There was also a memo folded with the tracer's handwriting. "If anything happens, use the key." The handwriting looked like Emma's, the tilt, the small loop on the G. But in that tilt was a practiced secrecy I hadn't noticed before. I went to the bank like a man who knows the rules but hopes for an exception. Inside the box was a thick packet of paperwork. A will that set the house in my name, a plane ticket paid in cash from Texas to a small coastal town 2 states away, and 2 photographs. The photographs were of Emma and Daniel in labeled clothes, holiday sweaters, a sombrero in one, silly faces in another, the kind of pictures people take when they are building proof of a life together. Under the photographs was a single letter addressed to me. I opened it with hands that no longer felt like my own. Her handwriting spilled across the page. "Jack, I am so sorry, not for the leaving, but for the way I did it. You deserved the truth. I tried to give it without cruelty and ended up cowardly. Daniel helped me. He was never meant to do this for attention. He gave me a place to breathe when I couldn't breathe in our house. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to find out if I could still be me. I left to know whether I was capable of staying and being honest for both of us. If you read this, then the rest of the plan worked better than I thought. If you are reading this and you are angry, you should be. If you are reading this and you are hurt, then I made the choice I thought we needed. Please look after Nora. Please don't let this destroy you. I love you in an old, slow way. I can't promise I'll return in any way that makes sense to you. E. There was a folded number at the bottom, a mobile with an out-of-service notice for any calls. On the inside of the envelope was another ticket, a deposit receipt to a storage locker in the next county, already paid through the year. You can imagine the righteous fury, the scandalous ends, call the cops, accuse Daniel, drag a man into court. I did none of that at first. Instead, I went to the theater where the poster had been. Daniel's name was still up in small print for a reading that had been pushed. He was gone. People told snippets. He'd left days after Emma. He'd been called out of town. The subtext was as old as gossip. The darkness of it arrived over months, in the calendar of grief. I sold the blue swing. I gave away her pots. I lit candles on the back porch and let the smoke remind me that things char and still smell the same. Sometimes I'd sit in the car near the river where I'd followed her, and a phantom of jealousy would rise like steam. The ledger in my phone became a museum piece I never looked at. The house was mine, but it was not my home anymore. Here's the final twist, and I wish I could tell you it ends with a revelation that answers everything. A letter arrived 9 months after her disappearance, postmarked from a coastal town 2 states away. It had no return address. Inside, 1 sentence. I left so you could find a life without me. If you ever come, you'll know where to look. E. I had the impulse to drive, to cast my life into the back seat and follow. I thought about calling the number on the deposit slip, going to the storage locker, reading through her papers like an archaeologist of intimacy, but I did not. I sat in the kitchen and watched Nora sleep and thought about the way a person can choose to be known by you and choose later to be unknown. So that's where it sits, A home with a closed door on one story, an open road on another, and an envelope I did not open. You might say I cowardly chose to leave my life standing, and maybe you'd be right. Or you might say I made a different kind of choice, to keep the ordinary things that mattered and not to burn the bridge for the sake of spectacle. I walk the sidewalk sometimes at night and look at the humming streetlights. They seem to lie less now. People around here say, the truth shows itself eventually. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the truth is that some decisions are too complicated to compress into tidy endings. Maybe the dark turn is not that she left, but that she taught me the shape of my own smallness. If you ask me if I forgive her, I'll tell you the honest thing. My answer would change with the weather. On sunny days, I think of the laughter we had and imagine a life that includes it. On rainy ones, I touch the envelope in the drawer and feel sorry for two people who were no longer enough for each other. Whatever else, I learned how fragile the ordinary is, how a single misstep, a single secret envelope can rearrange everything that seemed solid. The streetlight outside my kitchen hums tonight. Nora snores. The mail sits on the porch. Somewhere, a woman I loved is walking toward a shore 2 states away. Maybe she's happy. Maybe she's not. Maybe the dark was in me all along, and maybe it was in her. All I can do is stand in the small light and keep the kettle on.